Hello, my name is Keval Shah. I'm a sales engineer with Zscaler. In today's session, we're gonna walk through app profile and forwarding policy, forwarding profile and the app profile. So we can start off with some basic fundamentals, which is tied to the client connector. So let me pull that up. What does it mean? So when you have a client connector running on your machine, first and foremost, it registers with your tenant. But once it does, it pulls in the configuration from Zscaler Cloud. And when we talk about what policy got applied to your endpoint is defined right here. So app policy, which is SDC Mac OS app policy, was pushed to your client connector. Since we are a SaaS providers, this policy updates are pulled at a very regular intervals. So if there's any change happened in the configuration or the admin console, it gets pushed out to the end users right away. In situations when you need to make an immediate change, you can always click on update policy and you will receive the latest policy that was pushed through the admin console. Now let's go back to the dashboard. We go into the mobile portal, which is the client connector portal. Over here, you are seeing the client connector deployment, usage, entitlement, consumption, device operating system type, and so on. Our focus right now is to think about what it takes to, identify the forwarding mechanism from the client connector to Zscaler Cloud. As you may have heard, we can basically have multiple forwarding methods, but one of which is tunnel 1.0, tunnel 2.0, then we have GRE and obviously IPsec, right? But we were going to focus on the client connector based forwarding. So let's take a look into what we have here. By the way, you can create multiple forwarding profiles, maybe for different departments, groups, or research, based on your business structure. Okay, so it is not necessary that everyone has the same forwarding profile across the board. So I'm going to look at the SDC forwarding profile. That's what's been pushed out to my device. So when you look into the SDC forwarding profile, obviously I have trusted network. If I'm coming from the DNS that's routed, that's coming from my corporate DNS server, that basically tells Zscaler Client Connector that you are on the network, you are coming from a trusted environment, versus if it was if the DNS was released from public Wi-Fi, then you are definitely not in a trusted environment. So typically, when users are working from home or at Starbucks, the Zscaler Client Connector automatically identifies where the user is forwarding traffic from. So from a help desk perspective, they can do a better job in terms of providing the necessary support. This forwarding profile, as we can go further down, you can see trusted network evaluation options. Do we want to enable split tunnel or not? What kind of a driver selection do I want on the client connector? Keep in mind, the client connector is a forwarding engine which resides on the NIC, which is the network interface card on your smart device. So if you're using a Windows platform, they prefer packet filter based Windows driver selection. That's the recommended version. What kind of forwarding profile action do I want to take for ZIA, which is internet access? If the user traffic is going to google.com, how am I supposed to address it? Well, we would want that to be tunneled to Zscaler Cloud directly, as that's the best practice. And when you choose tunnel 2.0 is basically the new standard where we can forward not only port 80 or 443, but we can protect and forward traffic across all ports and protocols to Zscaler Cloud. So we can take advantage of, advanced cloud firewall and much more. Now, the other options that we have is tunnel with local proxy, enforced proxy, or none. So these are the options where you have, say, in-house another proxy platform where we need to forward the traffic to, or based on how you want to configure this environment. Okay. Sometimes when you have a PSC appliance, which is private service edge appliance, if you don't want to route the traffic from the client connector straight to Zscaler Cloud, and you wanted to hop through another network appliance, then that's when we change the forwarding profile action for the ZIA. Now, what else can I do with the Tunnel 2.0? Coming back to the most preferred and the recommended path. Do I want to drop IPv6? How do I really want to assign the service edge, or basically pick up the traffic? Should it be dynamic? Do you have a preference, right? So what is the threshold in terms of irregular intervals for DR purposes? All of that is captured here. As you can see, all the settings were meant for the ZIA, which is internet access. But when the user is on the VPN network, right, how do I want to handle the internet traffic? Do I still want to tunnel and use the policy that you defined up there? And the typical answer is yes. When the user is off the network, I still want the traffic to be tunneled, so I'm going to choose yes. And if it's a split tunnel, I want to make sure I can either say tunnel as I always plan to, or I can tunnel with local proxy where the traffic gets routed to on-prem, and then egress is back through the internet gateway. Now let's look into the forwarding profile for the ZPA, which is private application access. So when the user is on the trusted network or off trusted network, I really want them to tunnel the traffic to Zscaler. That basically tells that the Zscaler public service edge will broker the request between the user and the private applications owned and managed by your organization. Same thing applies for the split tunnel. So you have options right there. So once you define the forwarding profile, this forwarding profile gets basically consumed by the app profile, which you saw on the client connector. So as you can see on the app profile, we have Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android on multiple platforms. Again, you can have multiple app profiles depending on your user department or group or design that you would like to have. Let's look into the Windows app profile. Maybe we can take a quick look here. Am I deploying this app profile for certain user groups or certain users, right? So this, again, keep in mind the work that we do with IDP. It allows us to pull in all the SAML attributes like usernames, departments, groups, and we take advantage of that in terms of application or client connected rollout. Do I want to have password logouts just to make sure I control people logging out from logging out of Zscaler services? Keep in mind, if you turn off Zscaler, you basically establish a blind spot, which leads to a security blind spot comes at a cost. So you want to make sure you make the right decisions for the business and address it. So the forwarding profile that we just walked through, we are going to pick and choose. So over here, it basically shows you that this app profile is consuming SDC forwarding profile that we just saw. My SSL certificate is tied to the client connector, so it becomes easy to get man in the middle or intermediary certificate so that we can inspect the traffic as we go. There are many other options as you can read through. Always keep in mind, if you click on the question mark, it can answer the question or maybe get you more familiar with what that feature or functionality means. But the client connector forwarding profile and app profile configuration is very important in terms of getting the rollout to begin. Endpoint DLP is one of the component which we have introduced on the same client connector. So if you want to install the endpoint DLP, this is where you enable that so that the client connector can basically show and present the right services with right entitlement and control. Obviously, we look at disaster recovery very seriously. We can enable and configure the disaster recovery for ZIA and ZPA just to make sure if the services are down, how can we protect and bring them back up or fall over to the next available service provider to process the request. Then the deployment SCCM client configuration. If you are using SCCM, we can basically stitch it in right from here. So the client connector is communicating. This is one feature which I like. It's called flow logging. You can enable the flow logging. Basically, it allows you to capture a good understanding of not only the packets that you're bypassing from having it routed through Zscaler, if it's bypassed, we still keep a log of those bypass traffic. So if you don't have it enabled, if it's bypassed, we just you know shut our eyes and ignore any logs associated with that traffic. Okay, so this is very helpful, especially when it comes to troubleshooting and realizing why particular event happened and so on. Okay, now as I'm going through, I also want to make sure I talk to you about the VPN gateway bypass. First thing that we do with most customers is like we fire up the ZIA, which is the internet access. That basically means the internet traffic gets handled by Zscaler and it gets proxied as desired. But you also have a say, AnyConnect VPN or Global Protect VPN. As soon as you have Zscaler being the next hop, the VPN profiles will get routed through Zscaler and it will break the connection. So you don't want the VPN profiles to be routed through ZIA. So what you may want to do is you want to bypass those domains or the profile FQDNs or the IP servers. So you can enter them manually here. And by doing so, Zscaler Client Connector makes sure that the traffic never gets through Zscaler Internet Access Service Provider Service Edge. It gets handled locally, and the VPN profile can be instated and terminated at the right concentrator or the termination engine on your network. Okay, so this is a very important step. A lot of times people do question how to bypass and how to function through it. So I hope this session was very helpful. We learned through the uh, administration. We look at the forwarding profile. We look at the forwarding profile, and then we walk through the app profile to make sure we can get the client connector up and running and deployed at your environment at the very soonest. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.